What if I told you Tupac's murder was never just a drive-by? That behind the bullets were two of the biggest names in hip-hop history, Diddy and Suge Knight? Today, the case is being reopened, and the truth might finally come out. Nearly 30 years after Tupac's death, police are reopening the case. Why? Because new evidence points straight at Diddy. Was the rap mogul really the mastermind, or just another name caught in the chaos? They say Tupac died in Vegas in '96, but what if he didn't? From million-dollar murder plots to sightings in Cuba and Malaysia, this story is darker, stranger, and way bigger than you think. The night Tupac was gunned down in Vegas, witnesses heard his name being shouted seconds before bullets flew. But who ordered the hit? Was it Diddy, Suge, or someone else entirely? Let's break it down. Tupac Shakur's life ended violently at just 25 after navigating one of the toughest industries in the world. His murder has always been shrouded in mystery, but new investigations are pulling old names back into the spotlight. On that fateful night in Las Vegas, Tupac was seen leaning out of a car window just before gunfire erupted. Witnesses recall hearing people call out his name moments before shots were fired. This was not a random attack. Many believe it was part of a much bigger feud. Now, decades later, the spotlight has swung back onto Sean "Diddy" Combs. Once known for being one of the most powerful moguls in hip-hop, he now finds himself entangled in headlines that refuse to fade. As Diddy faces sentencing in an unrelated case, Las Vegas police have announced that they are reopening their investigation into the murder of Tupac Shakur. For many, this isn't just another case being dusted off. It feels like the reopening of an old wound that never truly healed. The story linking Diddy to Tupac stretches back to November 1995. That month, a single photograph stirred up more tension than most people realized at the time. In it, Tupac was seen with Sarah Chapman, Diddy's former partner and the woman he had once described publicly as his dream girl. To some, this looked harmless. To others, it was a spark in a room already filled with gasoline. Insiders have claimed that this encounter set off a chain of events that made Tupac a direct target. Not long after, Tupac was ambushed and shot multiple times in New York. He survived, but the incident planted the seed of suspicion. Tupac himself pointed fingers at people in Diddy's circle, claiming that the attack wasn't random at all. His words carried weight. He was angry, paranoid, and increasingly vocal about betrayal in the music industry. That first attempt on his life, some believe, was connected to jealousy and power struggles tied to Diddy. As the years rolled on, whispers grew louder. Former officers and investigators have come forward, alleging that Diddy offered money to have Tupac killed. One story that refuses to die is the claim that Diddy put out a $1 million bounty and that Southside Compton Crip member Dwayne "Keef D. Davis was one of the men tasked with carrying it out. The streets of Compton already had their own violent energy, but once big names and big money were involved, the situation escalated into something far darker. Keef D. himself has spoken about it in interviews. After decades of silence, he admitted to being in the white Cadillac that pulled up next to Tupac's BMW on the night of September 7, 1996. According to him, Diddy wasn't just a bystander in the feud, he was the one who gave the order. For law enforcement, this admission was a breakthrough, though it came long after the crime itself. For fans, it was a shock that confirmed long-held suspicions. But this story isn't just about Diddy. At the time, Suge Knight, Tupac's label boss at Death Row Records, was also a looming figure. Suge was in the car with Tupac when the fatal shots were fired, and his role has been debated ever since. Some detectives suspected Suge had his own reasons for wanting Tupac gone, especially if Tupac planned to leave Death Row and start his own label. The possibility that two powerful figures might have had motives created even more confusion. Adding to the web of speculation are comments from rappers who lived through that era. 50 Cent has openly accused Diddy of playing a role in Tupac's death, saying he could never respect him for it. Eminem even referenced the theory in his song, Fuel, suggesting that he feared Diddy could put a hit on him like Keef D did him. These weren't casual remarks. They reflected the uneasy belief within hip-hop that the story of Tupac's murder was much bigger than a random drive-by. Diddy himself has consistently denied the allegations. In interviews, including a memorable appearance on The Breakfast Club, he dismissed the theories as nonsense and refused to dignify them with long explanations. "We don't even entertain nonsense like that," he said, brushing the topic aside. Yet, for critics, the refusal to engage only deepened the suspicion. The case has been further complicated by how Tupac was portrayed versus who he truly was. On stage and in videos, he embodied the role of a hardened outlaw. But those who knew him privately have said that wasn't the full picture. He wasn't skilled with weapons, wasn't especially athletic, and didn't always fit the gangster image he projected. Some described it as method acting. He became so immersed in the role of thug life that he started believing it himself. This dual identity made him both a legend and a target. The reopening of the case has forced people to re-examine not only what happened on that September night, but also the fragile ecosystem of 90s hip-hop. Rivalries weren't just lyrical, they were financial, personal, and sometimes fatal. If Diddy did, in fact, play a part in orchestrating Tupac's death, it would mean that one of the most celebrated music moguls of our time was also involved in one of the culture's darkest chapters. And yet, despite all the testimonies, interviews, and conspiracy theories, there are still no clear answers. Some point to Suge Knight. Others believe Keef D's words seal the deal against Diddy. A smaller group even insists Tupac never died at all, that he staged his own exit and resurfaced years later in places like Cuba or Malaysia. What's certain is that the story refuses to fade. Nearly 30 years after his murder, Tupac's name still commands attention. Every time new evidence emerges or an old witness speaks, the spotlight returns to those who might have wanted him gone. The reopened investigation into Diddy's alleged role is just the latest twist in a mystery that has haunted music and pop culture for decades. Tupac once rapped about living fast and dying young, but he probably never imagined his death would become one of the most analyzed cases in American history. Whether the truth points to Diddy, Suge, or someone else entirely, one thing remains clear: the search for answers will continue until justice, whatever form it takes, finally comes. Former law enforcement officers have since claimed that Diddy paid $1 million to have Tupac killed. They allege that he hired Keef D to carry out the hit, while Suge Knight, Tupac's label boss, later retaliated by targeting Biggie Smalls. Keef D himself has stated that Diddy was the one who gave the order, and after 2 decades of avoiding arrest, Keef D was finally brought in for questioning. Even before the night of the infamous shooting that took his life, Tupac Shakur was already living under a shadow of violence and paranoia. Trouble seemed to find him no matter where he went, but in reality, it wasn't just bad luck. Many people believe the seeds of his death were planted long before September 1996. One of the key moments came years earlier, when Tupac was shot 5 times in a near-fatal attack at Quad Recording Studios in New York. That moment wasn't just another brush with danger, it changed everything. Tupac himself claimed he knew exactly who was behind it. He pointed the finger at rivals connected to Sean Diddy Combs and Bad Boy Records. To him, it wasn't just random street crime, it was betrayal by people who pretended to be his friends. After that night, Tupac began speaking out more openly about what he felt was happening in the music industry. He accused his enemies of hiding behind a fake image of toughness and street credibility, all while plotting against him from the shadows. He painted a picture of men who pretended to be warriors, but moved like businessmen, pulling strings quietly and letting others do the dirty work. What made Tupac unique was how convincingly he played the role of an outlaw. On stage and in music videos, he embodied the spirit of a fearless gangster who lived on the edge, ready to die for what he believed in. Fans saw him as untouchable, a rebel who lived and breathed the streets. But those closest to him knew the truth was more complicated. Privately, Tupac wasn't the same man the world saw. He wasn't obsessed with guns, he wasn't a natural fighter, and he didn't even enjoy the physical, violent side of the life he often rapped about. In fact, friends have said he wasn't particularly athletic at all. Much of the toughness people admired was a performance, what some called method acting. Like an actor who disappears into a role, Tupac lived his art so deeply that the lines between the real man and the character blurred. But this performance carried heavy risks. By projecting the image of a gangster, Tupac also attracted real enemies from that world. Those who wanted to test his authenticity saw him as a challenge. And the more he leaned into the outlaw role, the harder it became for him to separate himself from the dangers that role invited. Still, Tupac's brilliance lay in how real it felt. His music wasn't just entertainment, it carried anger, pain, and urgency that resonated with millions. He knew how to make people feel his struggle. When he accused Diddy's circle of betraying him, fans believed him. When he rapped about dying young, people thought he was predicting his own fate. His words felt less like lyrics and more like prophecy. The conflict between Tupac and those aligned with Diddy only grew hotter after the Quad Studios shooting. Tupac saw the attack not just as a physical wound, but as proof that people he once trusted wanted him gone. That paranoia, whether justified or exaggerated, fueled everything he did afterward. It also helped drive the larger East Coast versus West Coast rivalry that was ripping hip-hop apart at the time. Tupac, the West Coast icon, had now declared war on his East Coast counterparts, calling them out in interviews, songs, and even casual conversations. His raw honesty won him loyal supporters, but it also made him dangerous. He wasn't playing politics, he was naming names and pointing fingers. This was the double-edged sword of Tupac's persona. The same fire that made him legendary also made him vulnerable. By refusing to back down, by embracing the role of a man who had nothing to lose, he kept escalating conflicts that might have been defused with silence. But silence wasn't in his nature. And so, even before his final night in Las Vegas, Tupac was living on borrowed time. The earlier shooting, the public accusations, the relentless pushing against powerful people, it all built up to an atmosphere where violence seemed inevitable. His enemies saw him as reckless. His friends worried he was too bold for his own good. Yet, to the world, he was still the symbol of resistance, the voice of truth, the outlaw who stood tall in the face of danger. What many didn't realize was that behind the tough lyrics and the sharp interviews was a young man who sometimes felt like he was playing a part he couldn't escape. By the time the bullets flew in Vegas, Tupac's story was already written in tragedy. He was a man caught between the character he created and the reality he lived. And that tension between art and life, between image and truth, may be the real reason he became both immortal and doomed. The story has resurfaced in popular culture too. 50 Cent has repeatedly accused Diddy of orchestrating Tupac's murder, and Eminem referenced the same allegations in his song, Fuel, rapping that he didn't want a hit put on him like Keef D did him. Even the Breakfast Club confronted Diddy about the claims during an interview, but he brushed it off, calling the rumors nonsense and refusing to go further. But Diddy isn't the only name coming up in the reopened case. Suge Knight has also been implicated. Detective Greg Kading and others have long suspected that Knight may have arranged for Tupac's murder as a way to stop him from leaving Death Row Records, then tried to blame a rival crew for the hit. Another unexpected name tied to the night is Snoop Dogg. At the time, Snoop was supposed to be in the same BMW with Tupac and Suge Knight, but wasn't. He says it was due to last-minute changes after an argument with Tupac. Just days before the shooting, their friendship had soured. Snoop told Angie Martinez in an interview that he admired Biggie and Puffy's music, which upset Tupac deeply. According to Snoop, the tension grew so severe that he traveled separately for safety. Snoop later revealed that 2 days before Tupac's death, their relationship had deteriorated so much that Tupac seemed to hate him out of nowhere. Given how connected Snoop was to the streets in the 90s, some believe he may have sensed something dangerous was about to happen, perhaps even a hit on Tupac, and deliberately stayed out of the car that night. Now, with new evidence surfacing and names like Diddy, Suge Knight, Keef D, and even Snoop Dogg being reevaluated, the mystery of Tupac's death is once again at the center of headlines. Nearly 3 decades later, the question remains, who really ordered the hit on one of hip-hop's greatest icons? Back in the mid-90s, the bond between Snoop Dogg and Tupac began to crack. Snoop recalls telling an interviewer that he liked Biggie and Puffy's music and wanted to collaborate with them. What felt honest to him, however, struck Tupac the wrong way. In Tupac's eyes, that statement looked like betrayal, and tension began to build between the two friends. But the real storm came on September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas. Tupac was in town with Suge Knight to watch Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. After the match, chaos broke out in the hotel lobby when Tupac spotted Orlando "Baby Lane" Anderson, the same man accused of snatching his chain years earlier. A fight erupted, with Tupac and Suge's crew jumping Anderson. Security quickly broke it up, but the damage was already done. What no one knew then was that retaliation was coming. Keef D, a Southside Compton Crip, later admitted to LAPD Detective Greg Kading that the attack on Orlando was the final straw. Within hours, plans for revenge were already in motion. After the scuffle, Tupac and Suge returned to their hotel, changed clothes, and prepared for a night out at Club 662. Around 11 p.m., they left in a black BMW, unaware that a white Cadillac was stalking them on the Vegas Strip. Inside that car were Keef D, Orlando Anderson, and 2 others. At the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, the Cadillac pulled alongside Suge's BMW. Tupac leaned out the window, laughing and waving like he was part of a parade. Keef D would later say it looked like Tupac reached for something in the car door, maybe a weapon, maybe not. In that tense moment, gunfire erupted. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. Suge was grazed by a bullet but survived. Years later, Keefe D gave interviews admitting he was in the car that night. He described the scene: Orlando leaned over, the window rolled down, and shots were fired. He also expressed regret, saying the whole thing was just wrong and ruined countless lives. Still, the case has never been fully closed. Over the years, strange theories have surfaced. One officer suggested Tupac might have been working with the government as an undercover figure, an industry plant sent to cool tensions between gangs. Others close to him, like political mentor Chokwe Lumumba, said Tupac used the thug life persona as a strategy, not a reality. Behind the tattoos and tough image, he was an intellectual trying to push for peace. But the plan failed and the violence swallowed him. Some even believe Snoop Dogg distanced himself after sensing something wasn't right, possibly even suspecting Tupac's larger role in this political game. Adding fuel to the mystery, occasional claims still pop up suggesting Tupac survived. In a 2010 interview, one of his close friends, Murd3r, hinted that the rapper might still be alive. Whether truth or myth, those whispers keep the legend of Tupac burning, decades after that fatal night in Vegas. Tupac and Murd3r weren't just acquaintances, they were once close friends and collaborators. That's why an old interview clip of Murd3r caught fans completely off guard. Thinking the camera was off, Murd3r casually mentioned that the last time he saw Tupac was in Cuba. The problem? By then, Tupac had been officially dead for 14 years. The way he said it sounded recent, almost like he'd just run into him. And if it was only an interview, why lower the camera for that question at all? Things only got stranger from there. Not long after, a news site posted a grainy video from Cuba that appeared to show Tupac sitting in a parking lot. In the clip, a man off camera says, "That's him, man. He outlaw, holler back. He's trying to be friendly, get an autograph. Holler back exclusive, baby." The footage went viral, fueling the already burning Tupac in Cuba theory. Even Suge Knight, Tupac's former manager and the man who was literally in the car during the shooting, has fueled speculation. In multiple interviews, Suge claimed Tupac might still be alive. He's been consistent, too, repeating the same details over the years. Suge described how, at the hospital after the shooting, Tupac was doing well. "When I left that hospital, me and Pac were laughing and joking," Suge said. "I don't see how somebody can turn from doing well to doing bad." Police records tell a different story, though. According to official statements, Tupac was in a medically induced coma, far too unresponsive to laugh or talk. Yet Suge never backed down. In a 2008 interview, he again said Tupac was conscious both on the way to the hospital and even after surgery. When asked what Tupac's last words were, Suge only said, "They left." 2 weeks after that interview aired, Suge was involved in a shooting incident where someone fired at him 6 times. He survived, but noticeably stopped discussing Tupac's case as openly afterward, reportedly worried he'd been targeted for talking too much. The mystery didn't stop with Suge himself. In 2018, his son, Suge Knight Jr., added more fuel to the fire. Taking to Instagram, he claimed Tupac was alive and living in Malaysia. Days later, he posted screenshots of text messages warning him, "You said too much. It's time for you to go." In response, Suge Jr. doubled down, uploading images of Tupac photoshopped with modern-day celebrities like 50 Cent and Beyoncé. Under one picture of Beyoncé, he wrote, "He never left us, but they'll be after me soon." Fans were divided. Some accused Suge Jr. of clout chasing, others believed he was telling the truth. After all, if anyone would know the reality of Tupac's fate, it would be Suge Knight and his son.